All right. Hello, everybody. See, we've got a group joining us for today's office hour session. We'll give it just, I don't know, 60, 90 seconds and let folks filter in from the lobby. We've got Leslie McCarrick here joining today. Erin is also with us, but Leslie is going to be helping me out a little bit and filling some of the roles that Erin often does. Um, I know that the past couple of times I've been able to start the office hours with kind of announcements or updates. I really don't have a whole lot to share today. Um, we sent out on Friday the reminder for this office hours, but also just some additional nuance on the guidance about bulk challenge functionality. Um, and we are working with the developer to get that available as quickly as we're able. And that's really kind of the summation of what I've got to share in new updates. And so I suppose we'll just go ahead and say, folks, if you've got questions, go ahead and hit that raise hand icon and we'll provide as many answers as we're able. Lynn, it looks like your hand is up.
Hey there. I just have a quick
Hello.
question for Leslie, actually, because I just received some emails from you. It's okay. My question is, so I'm seeing that you sent emails back, but what do they mean? Does that mean that they're forwarded on for review?
Yep, your inquiries I send to Daniel and to Miles to be reviewed, and then they get back. They're keeping track of the CAIs. So
Okay, great. Thank you.
I see I have more to forward.
Yes, that's all right. Thanks.
Roseanne, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Well, I don't, it isn't really a question, it's a comment. We had an independent, we had DCS Technologies map our county as well as, and they mapped Berrien and Van Buren here on the west side of the state. And we're 98%, I guess the term I'll use is hooked up. We have 90, yeah. So I'm fairly certain we will not be mounting a challenge. We we have Midwest Energy and Communications. They're working on 500 sites that we're not hooked up, but are being hooked up. They got a grant, so as I say, it's very unlikely that we would mount a challenge.
Well, that sounds good. And I think you're lifting up something really important for everybody to keep in mind about the BEAD State Challenge process. We start with the FCC broadband data collection information. Specifically, we started with BDC version 3 as updated through February 7, 2024. And then there are certain changes that get made to that. Some of them are NTIA themselves applying certain standards that are drawn from the bipartisan infrastructure law, but the FCC doesn't use them in the BDC mapping. And one of the things that I think we've had several ISPs around Michigan having to look at and deal with has to do with the latency standards that FCC doesn't have. They don't change the served, underserved, unserved kind of flag on their map or status color really on their map based on latency, but NTIA does actually require us to take a look at that. So we start with that FCC information, lay on top of it those additional NTIA requirements for what qualifies as served for the BEAD program. Also looking at only certain technologies are considered for the BEAD program, things of that nature. Then on top of that, Michigan had 4 pre-challenge modifications that were approved as part of our initial proposal, Volume 1. And so those get even set on top of that data, that FCC information modified by NTIA, modified again by Michigan's BEAD State Challenge process or BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 1. And so that information, of course, is what's reflected in our state challenge map or state challenge portal. We use both terms, but they mean essentially the same thing. You can think of challenges then as essentially requests for corrections to the way that information is reflected in the portal or on the map. And so, exactly like you're describing, Commissioner, um, if a correction is not necessary, then there's no need to file a challenge. And that is true whether that location is designated as CAI or not, designated served or not, unserved, underserved. If the information that's on the map is correct, then no challenge needs to be filed at all. And many communities like Cass County, and many, many other entities around the state have been doing remarkable work to collect and examine information. And, the internet, we've got quite a network of internet service providers around the state who are all doing their FCC reporting. And so broadly speaking, a great proportion of the locations are correctly represented on the map. The challenge process is just our opportunity to work through any places where corrections are necessary to be as complete, current, and accurate as possible. Certainly, we've received tens of thousands of challenges. We're processing those and working through them, and we'll continue to do that. But many communities, many organizations, many individuals don't see a need for corrections in the areas that they care about most. And in a lot of ways, that's really great news. Mitch Shapiro, I see your hand is up.
Okay, yes. Two questions. The first one, very quick. In the past, you folks have talked about I think it was a final 5 days, whatever. There was a cutoff where
Yep.
You won't be able to respond. You're sort of giving us a warning that if you wait too long, don't expect to hear from us before the deadline, or maybe at all. I don't know, whatever. But how specific can you be about what that date is, or even the time of day, end of day? Because we're trying to. I'm sure around the whole state, people are trying to prioritize things to get it in and get it done in time. So what can you tell us as specific as possible about that?
Yeah, I can be incredibly specific. It is, as I hope everyone on this call knows, we have extended the challenge submission period by 7 days, which means that the deadline for the challenge submission phase is Tuesday, April 30 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you to Joan from Charter for the good reminder to put Eastern Time at the end of that time there. So counting back 5 days from that is the 25th of April will be the last day that challenge is submitted. By the 25th of April, we will provide feedback in the event that the evidence is insufficient to support the challenge. That means that we will obviously continue to accept challenge submissions through that challenge submission phase. But if you file a challenge on the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, or 30th, we will either accept or reject that challenge based on the information that you uploaded without communication to say, here's what the problem with the evidence was and what we would want you to look at more closely should you choose to resubmit this challenge.
Mm-hmm. And even within those 5 days, well, before the 5 days, I don't know that you can be more specific about this question, but how many days will it take you to know that if we, on the you know what I mean? In other words, if you need 5 days and we put it in, we won't have any time to respond. So can you clarify or even make any recommendations? Obviously, the earlier the better is the obvious answer.
No, as quickly as we can is really the very best that I can do. It largely is going to depend on the volume of the challenges that we receive. We are the number of people that we are as reviewers, and we're working as quickly and as efficiently as we can. We do find that, we've had great success with the challengers that chose to engage in the process early with us, and so we've had conversations about the evidence submission, and so there are places where folks who chose to jump into the conversation and jump into the process early, now know exactly what to pull from their systems and exactly how to move forward. And so that's been working very smoothly. Um, we anticipate that as we push toward the deadline, both we're going to be getting a large volume, and also, it's like everywhere else, it's a pretty deadline-driven industry and business, and so we anticipate that there are folks that are going to start filing their challenges um, that maybe have not been deep in the process before, and therefore, some of the challenges may require, not may require, some of the challenges, just won't have that level of quality from the folks that have been in the process for a while.
Mhm. Yeah. And in our situation, we focused initially on the BSL challenges, availability challenges. The CAIs is what we're working on now. So what I'm getting from this is we should submit at least some of our CAI challenges to get some feedback and see if, because we haven't gone through that process yet, so we don't know what we might be doing wrong or insufficiently. So seems like at least get a few in and get some feedback if we're missing something, because
Yeah.
it's CAIs are even messier than the standard VSLs in certain respects.
Yeah,
Okay, unless you have
CAI.
anything more to say,
Yeah.
do you have any? If you can.
No, just that I want to lift up kind of those same core principles that we have been talking about from the beginning, which is, spending time with the user guide, look at those specific examples, those appendices that talk about specific examples of the evidence for the different types of challenges, right? And really think about what you can access from your systems or from publicly available evidence, or to the extent you have privately available evidence, um, that meets those standards, right? And always, always centering that core question: could someone who doesn't know anything about my community or my organization or this neighborhood, or somebody who doesn't know the specifics on the ground, understand how the information contained specifically just in this evidence shows that the standards outlined for this type of challenge have been met? It is very likely the case in many types of challenges that folks are combining a couple of documents. Maybe they have a screenshot, of their like network infrastructure diagram, and then they provide supplementally a legend, that explains the blue lines represent fiber and the green lines represent drops, or whatever the case might be. And then they provide, a list of all of the different locations that are shown on that map, or whatever the case might be, right? Because everybody's systems are a little bit different. So thinking about the right combination of documents to meet those standards in a way that every location included in the challenge is clearly identified in your evidence, and you have met all of the elements of the requirements that are set out in Volume 1, and that we've given additional examples and detail about in the user guide. That April 3rd memo, there's kind of an example 1, example 2 in it, and really tries to walk through specifically, right? Like, here's a scenario, here's what you could do to meet these standards. So that's what I got. Not directly on point.
Good.
But yeah.
That's good. So it'll send me back to the user guide, whatever. The second question is, we got a email from, this is from a CAI in a particular part of the county, and they said that an ISP is building fiber down the main roads. And they mentioned the main roads in that area. But they said that they've heard that if you're off the main road, you're going to have to pay extra to get the line run down there. And this relates to the same ISP is submitting a challenge area location served challenge with at least more than 100 locations in that area. So I'm wondering, is my high office going to check on that? In other words, if or is it up to someone else, a rebutter, to go through their challenges through all those locations and sort that out? In other words, is that part of what my high plans to do for those kinds of served, currently served, or whatever the phrase is, challenges, to inquire about whether all the addresses are actually served without extra connectivity fee, connection fees, or not?
Yeah,
Is that clear? Is the question clear?
I think so. I'll respond to it, and if I am answering something a little off point, then you can ask another clarifying question. As we have lifted up during office hours before, the BEAD standard for availability, as established not by MyHigh, but at the federal level, is that a location is considered served, whether or not it currently subscribes to service, if that location could be subscribed to service within 10 business days at no additional fees beyond a standard installation fee, right? Like no excessive construction charges, no, line extension cost. And so we at MyHigh have been working to carefully review. I am relatively certain that any ISP that's been submitting a services currently available challenge, availability-services available, probably feels that we have been working very stringently to review that evidence. And the reason is, really frankly, the point that Mitch is lifting up is that we have to be absolutely certain that locations that are being reported as served and therefore will not receive funding for construction through the BEAD program are in fact served. And so that is the reason that, yes, we are attempting to review as closely as possible and looking for a high evidence standard. With that said, Mitch, to your specific point, is the point of the challenge process is that it is impossible for us to know within MyHigh realities of certain things that may be said in communities and on the ground, right? And so if there is a place where information that was submitted to us and reviewed by us nevertheless has countervening evidence of some nature or type, then that is a really, really appropriate place for rebuttal. Those availability service is available or current service challenges all appear in that open rebuttals list, which, yes, is getting long and yes, is a large tool, but it is out there. And if folks have specific concern about, I was at the county commission meeting and Acme Internet made a presentation and, showed that this neighborhood or subdivision or something was getting left off the map, that is evidence that it would be interesting to take time to, once again, grab that user guide, look at the standards for rebuttal evidence, and consider if and how you can meet the standards that are articulated there if you'd like to submit a rebuttal because you have concern that information that was provided during the challenge and accepted should be reviewed again and potentially, the challenge should be rebutted and the map should remain unchanged. That make sense? Did I get it?
Yeah. And I guess a follow-up question is, the last I checked, there was over 100 of these, and that was, last week. So we don't have the time or the manpower to do a whole lot of individual check. In other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is, will the burden of evidence sort of shift some if if we provide evidence, if this is the case, I hope it isn't the case, but if it is the case where really a lot of the addresses are actually, they're going to have to be charged whatever, some extra fee to get the fiber there. If we give examples, that's probably the best we can do, is find a handful of examples and hope that that will trigger even more rigorous review of the evidence submitted by the ISP by MyHigh, because I don't even know if this ISP has a search, an online search, and I don't think we can get more than a handful of people to call up.
Of course, yeah.
And inquire and make the effort to come up with the documentation. So can you respond to that in terms of what would be the most helpful to help MyHigh if that sort of negative scenario is the case? In other words, where actually they are going to be charging a whole lot extra. What level of what scope of evidence would you need? I know you can't give me a specific answer, but some guidance would help, because I'm going to have to try and talk people into doing more work. So
yeah,
don't do it yourself.
Yeah, when we talk about kind of shifting or reversing the burden of proof, those are keywords that we sort of lift up from the area challenge or MDU challenge processes. There's not an area rebuttal kind of tool contemplated. With that said, in a unique and compelling circumstance where a pattern exists, we would encourage you to file as many individual challenges that demonstrate that pattern, and many individual rebuttals, as demonstrate that pattern. And a note alongside those rebuttals that describes the broader pattern. We're literally opening every file that's submitted as a piece of evidence. I really can't emphasize enough what I know that everyone who is participating in submitting challenges is experiencing, and that we're reading these things all very closely. And so I think that's as much as I can say at this point, right? Area challenges and MDU challenges do reverse that burden of proof. In terms of rebuttals, there's not been contemplation of something to that effect, but if there is a broader pattern, certainly let us know, because that would be something that could potentially be of interest.
That's good guidance about sort of those. If there's evidence that it is a pattern, that's helpful guidance about how to approach the task of demonstrating there's a pattern, because that's what would be most helpful to MyHigh, and so that I think that's very helpful. So unless you have anything more, I'll pass the microphone on to whoever else wants to grab it.
I have a question about area challenges.
Actually, Jessica, I had just one clarification. You didn't. I think I know what the answer is, but if it's 11:59 on the 30th, 11:59 on the 25th for that sort of cutoff, or is it 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Just if we're racing to get it in before that, it may come down to a matter of hours or even minutes. So
I'm going to be honest, Mitch, and say that.
Whoops. Oh.
No, I am there. I'm going to be honest, Mitch, and say that we have not.
I'm sorry, Jessica. I took my earpieces off, so if you can just start your response again, I apologize.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I'm going to be honest and say that we have not, as a MyHigh team, discussed the to-the-minute cutoff. So I'm going to call an audible here and say, for that guarantee, then we're going to say close of state business as of 5 p.m. on Thursday the 25th. We will make a good faith effort to do all that we can to provide that sort of feedback for 5:01 to 11:59 p.m. on April 25. But if you want to hit that guarantee, use 5 p.m. Eastern on 4/25.
Okay, that'll work. Thanks.
Mhm. And I didn't even need all of my High staff members to turn on their cameras and look them in the eye as I said, we're going to cut that off at 5. So there's that. Hey, Lynn, if you want to go ahead and ask your question about area challenges, I think we're ready.
Sure. I know we've covered this a lot, but
No
I
problem.
just wanted to confirm that for area challenges, for me to be able to see them, I can go to my census block and kind of click through the addresses.
Yes.
And if they have changed, then there's an area challenge in that block. Is that correct?
So they would not have necessarily, in fact, generally would not have changed status. So they wouldn't have changed from like green to yellow or red. What would have changed is I've heard our developers call it the chip or the little label that says like challenged
Mm-hmm.
in the left-hand pane when you check on that click on that location. And so if you see that throughout the census block group, then that could be an indication
Okay.
that it's changed. It's a little bit trickier to spot with a wireless service provider because for a wireline service, it's every location that they claim to serve in that census block group is in fact part of the area challenge, right? Because evidence of infrastructure could then include like diagrams or things that are static for and considered to be accessible. For wireless providers, the area challenge includes at 10% of the locations that they report to serve in that census block group with that technology, and in no cases fewer than 10. And so they could be a little bit trickier to spot because it wouldn't necessarily be all of the locations, but that is still the best practice is to check within your census block group.
Okay, that makes sense. So then if I see an address that under the challenged, in the challenge section, it would say the challenged provider and the challenger would be Calhoun County. But then if I see another one, it looks like that's maybe from maybe blank, then that could be a challenge, or that could be one of those locations.
It could be.
Or, okay. And then my other question about that area on of details where
Mhm.
it's under challenged and it says rebutted and the answer underneath it is no. Does that mean that the challenged provider has looked at that and has decided not to challenge it? Or what does that no mean under rebutted?
Um, it means that a rebuttal has not been submitted yet. It does not
Okay.
necessarily mean that it has been passed through and yeah, you hear what I'm saying, that it's been passed over.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. I see a question in the chat that says, can you remind us what actions need to be taken for incorrect CAI addresses? And then Rachel goes on to give, for her county specifically, there are a number of incorrect addresses indicating CAI government addresses and a couple that are not marked at all. And so, yes, I absolutely can, and we'll talk through those things. So I'm also probably going to give a little bit broader answer, maybe, Rachel, than you're imagining, because I just want to make sure that we're lifting up and covering all of the various bases that are in there. So broadly speaking, there are 4 types of challenges that might be filed that involve community anchor institutions. 2 of them are specific to a location's essentially identity as a community anchor institution. 2 of them have to do with a community anchor institution's broadband service level. So you have this location is a community anchor institution and should be labeled as such. That's a type C challenge. And at least from the snapshots I'm seeing, seems to be the most frequently used type of challenge when we get into the CAI space, type C challenges. Then you have type R challenges for this location is not a community anchor institution. That would be used in the instance where a location is flagged with CAIs. I think everybody knows this at this point. CAIs are identified as triangles on the map, but if a location that is flagged as a CAI doesn't fit the definition and is in fact just a regular residence or business, you'd use a type R. This location is not a CAI challenge. Small note on that, we had discussion during office hours last week about how that was, when you tried to file that type of challenge, you'd have to put in a minimum service speed. It is my understanding that that update has been pushed through so that you don't have to do that any longer. If I'm wrong about that, you can continue to just use a very low value in each of those boxes for download and upload speed. All right, so we have C. This is a CAI. R, this is not a CAI. Then you have G, like giraffe. For this is a CAI, which does not have qualifying broadband service. This is a CAI that I have information that they tried to get subscribed to gigabit symmetrical service and are not able to do that, right? These challenges could pop up in locations where there currently is no information. They could be designated as served. They could be green triangles, but there's no information specifically about their broadband capability. That has to do with essentially how FCC tracks CAIs, or the fact that they don't really track CAIs in the way that they track residences and businesses. And so in some cases, we've had to make determinations about how to represent a CAI's connectivity status based on how close it is to where we know fiber is. And so if a CAI has tried to get that fiber connection and it turns out that they cannot, then that's good information to file under a type G challenge. Then there's also a type Q challenge. For this location is the CAI where there is qualifying broadband available, right? And so you'd use this challenge if you have a red CAI triangle, but you have information that this particular CAI does in fact have access, again, within 10 business days at no additional construction cost. It's not required that the CAI is subscribed to that gigabit symmetrical connection. It is required that they have that available. So that type Q challenge you'd use to correct the red triangle to the green triangle. But now that I've given that basic framework, I think what Rachel is describing most directly is what happens when we need to correct a CAI location. She says there's incorrect addresses indicating CAI government addresses. And so it's possible that you might need to file 2 different challenges to make this correction. You might need to file first a type R. This location is not a CAI challenge, to essentially turn off that triangle and convert that particular location back to a regular BSL. You do that straight within the portal, just like any other single location challenge. You click right on it, you hit the submit challenge button, you provide the necessary information. So those type R challenges are all handled through the portal. The type C challenges, this location should be designated a CAI challenge, could happen in one of 2 ways. The one way is that there is a regular BSL, a circle that needs to be converted to a triangle. In that case, you click on that circle, you select that this location is a CAI challenge in the portal, and you work through the process there. If, however, you have a location that is a CAI for which there is no BSL on the map, there is no circle there, then what you need to do is to email us. And there is a written description of how to do this in the appendix to the user guide. And what you're going to do is you're going to collect all of the relevant information about the name of the organization, which category of community anchor institution it is. Now, in some cases, this might be super obvious. It might be captured in the name. The example I've used before is if I was trying to add someplace called Steele Elementary School to the map, that would make clear that it's a school and it's a K-12 school. So it'd be really evident in the name of the organization. For the vast majority of CAIs, it may not be that clear. So make sure that you clearly identify in your message not only the name, but which category of CAI it is. If you need to review what the categories of CAIs are, I'm going to direct you back to Initial Proposal Volume 1, where we provide a table that gives a great amount of detail on the different types of CAIs. You want to provide the location. If you have latitude, longitude, that's fantastic, but we definitely need the address as well, right? So if you can provide both, that's great, but definitely at least provide the address. If you have information about the connectivity, that would be really helpful, right? So if you know that you're trying to add Steele Elementary School to the map, and you know that Steele Elementary School tried to get connected to a gigabit symmetrical connection and was not able to, then tell us that in the email that has this challenge. And that will put all of that information together so that we can not only populate that information into the open rebuttals list, which is what happens to all type C challenges as they go into open rebuttal, because there's no direct rebutter for that, right? Like anyone can go up there, or anyone can go over to the portal and respond to it. But it'll give us all the information to add it to the list in the most correct way possible. That's a lot of information, Rachel. I hope it was helpful. If you've got clarifying questions, let me know.
Just are you looking into the CAI editions address, the
Yeah,
email
and
title? Okay.
I am. I'm looking to see if I can just find specifically the page number to give. Yeah, and Jackie, I see the same thing. I'm looking to see if I can find. You know what? I'm not finding my page reference that I want. But what I can tell you is the email address I'm going to drop in the chat. It's leo-my-highspeedinternet@michigan.gov. And of course, my computer doesn't want to let me select it, but I'm going to add that in there. And if you use the subject line of CAI addition, that will get it where it needs to go. For better and for worse, it's entirely a human process, not a manual process. And so CAI edition will get us where we need to go. CAI BSL edition is great. CAI edition will also work. Autumn, I see your hand. Do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
So I am currently working on an area where I have a CAI that is listed as one kind of CAI, but it's actually a different kind of CAI. So it's listed as a library, but it's actually a hospital clinic.
Okay. So you absolutely could do this as a type C and type N type challenge. There's no specific path in the challenge that's just like change the category
Yeah.
or group. Yeah. So I would just do that. Is this location is not a CAI because
It's not
you know,
what it
it's
says
not
it
a
is.
library. This location is a CAI because it's, you said health clinic, right?
Yeah.
Because it is a health clinic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which absolutely is something that we'll be able to process. Those two things will talk to each other well. It'll all make sense on the back
Okay.
end.
Perfect. Perfect.
And I'm going to use this as an example because Autumn, you've been doing so much work to get in different types of challenges. I know you don't need this recommendation, but it's a great point for me to pause and lift up. That as we narrow toward this deadline, we do want to encourage folks to continue to think about consequential challenges as their top priority, which is to say the ones that are going to change the BEAD qualifying nature of the location. So if you have a challenge, like Autumn is describing, that ultimately would provide updated information but not change the BEAD eligibility of a location, and you also have other challenges to file that could move a location from being considered un or underserved to being considered served, or vice versa, or could move a location from being a standard BSL that has a 100 by 20 connection and therefore isn't BEAD qualifying, but it's actually a CAI. Those kind of consequential challenges that could change BEAD eligibility, it would be our recommendation that you prioritize those first. So like I said, Autumn, I know that you've definitely got your arms around it, but I just want to lift that up like I try to mention in every office hours discussion, and I think we'll especially emphasize as we come to the close of the challenge process, is for those who might need to make decisions about priority setting or which challenges, to make certain to get in, we would encourage focus on those consequential challenges.
So just so you guys are aware, I'm putting in everything because there's no point in going through an area and doing the 5 that, are yellow or red instead of green. But I don't know if you can prioritize on your end by which ones. If you want to skip over my ones that are, just adding us into a already technically served area until the end. If I don't make it on the map for those, I'm not worried. I mean, I am, but I'm not compared to the others.
Yeah. Our staffing strategy for how we're covering these things, we'll certainly bring it up. There's not going to be like a formal way that we do that, but yes, it's a good point, and we will certainly keep that top of mind for our side as well. Thank you, Autumn.
Yeah, because I want everything. I want to show them properly because we weren't at all, but I'm far more concerned about those that will edit funding problems.
Yep, absolutely. The ones that affect the funding. And I see a note from Jackie here. She says, just to confirm, in a prior office hours, we discussed that if CAIs are in the correct location and labeled correctly, but the address is wrong, so this might not be a priority, especially if they're already considering served. Am I remembering this correctly? And yes, that is absolutely correct. So if the CAI has been placed on the map, exactly as Jackie's describing, and the triangle is in the correct location, but the address label is reading incorrectly, that means that it's probably been assigned to a BSL that is a BSL location that is on the correct parcel, or maybe a lat long was used to locate that, but if it's in the right place and the address represents incorrectly, then that is not a priority. And that takes us all back to the idea that BEAD being this BSL-based location by location program. We at MyHigh have to establish this process for identifying and listing CAIs and then locating them on the map. And so largely speaking, many CAIs do track back very neatly onto the fabric, and many CAIs therefore landed exactly where they needed to be. And if they physically are showing up in the correct place, then we're good to go. It's not always a perfectly seamless process, and that's part of why there are Type C and Type N challenges as part of our challenge process, so that we can work to get those things showing up where they need to be. So yes. Other questions, whether they're about CAIs or another type of challenge? And maybe I'm going to learn my lesson about turning off the recording. And because yes, we do. Tyler has asked if we have a list of all the community anchor institutions in Michigan. And I do have a list and a link that I can share. With that said, this should be considered a preliminary list. These are the link that I'm about to drop in the chat is the list that was developed through the sources and methods that are listed in Initial Proposal Volume 1. For example, one of the categories of CAIs for the purpose of Michigan's BEAD program is agricultural labor camps. And we got the information, MyHigh, got the information about where those are by asking the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development for their information because they register and track those places. So that is what is represented for the agricultural labor camp type on the map. And so I share that just to say that this is kind of the starting place or entry place list. There's every possibility that there are CAIs or there's entities or organizations that fit into these categories that didn't make it onto our list. Maybe the MDARD list of agricultural labor camps, I think, is pretty good and pretty current, but we know that government facilities move, exactly as Rachel was kind of implying earlier. We know that public housing organizations and health centers and all sorts of things may not have been fully captured, even though we did our very best efforts with our research. And so just like the categorization of BSLs will be adjusted through the state challenge process, we won't have that final list of what's considered a CAI in Michigan until we complete the state challenge process and all the adjudications that go along with it. But at any rate, with all of that disclaimer, the table that I linked here in the chat does contain that list of CAIs. In addition, it provides information about what we know or believe that we know about their connectivity. So you can look across, I believe it is column N, like Nancy, that has that connectivity information as well. So I see the question in the chat about what each letter represents under CAI type. So I don't happen to have the file open right now. I can walk through it, but I just need to open the file so I can make sure I do it correctly. Yeah. Okay, Tyler, I am looking in column A with you. And I don't currently see a legend within initial proposal volume 1 as I'm doing this right here. Broadly speaking, the ones that are listed as Cs seem to track with the community support organizations. So that's the category that stretches from page 9 through page 10 and even through page 11. G seems to include government facilities. I'm going to actually try to sort this. H has to do with the health centers, health clinics, hospitals, and medical providers. S is capturing schools, L for libraries. So I don't think I certainly haven't caught all of the categories there, but it is, F is going to be like your public safety. So it's more than just fire, but public safety. I think, broadly speaking, I'm capturing those categories there, and I hope that that is helpful. But it's going to track back to the different categories on the CAI table. I hope that I've been helpful there, Tyler. Okay, I'm popping my mic back on to lift up a question that has appeared in the chat, wanting to trying to confirm and publicize the new challenge submission deadline of April 30. Yes, absolutely acceptable, and in fact encouraged to help circulate that new deadline. We are working on, I shouldn't say working on, we are awaiting the publication of updates on our website and also a newsletter from MyHigh to our own distribution lists that does confirm that date as well. But yes, that is the date and that is the one that can be shared broadly. Okay, I have popped the recording back on and I'll read out a question from the chat. It says, we've had a municipality request guidance in preparing a bulk challenge. What materials or recordings should we point them toward? And so the recommendation that I think we would have here would be to, first off, that your core guidance in terms of what challenges are available, what the pre-challenge modifications are, what the community anchor institutions, all of that is a process that we worked through with NTIA, that MyHigh worked through with NTIA, that is memorialized in initial proposal volume 1. With that said, the rubber meets the road, how to prepare a challenge, how to use the portal, specific examples of what types of evidence would be sought to support any particular type of challenge. The user guide is the place to go for that specific evidence. Or not for that specific evidence, for that specific level of detail and those step-by-step guides. Everything from where to click when you're trying to set up a user account, to how to use the draw tool, to what types of challenges are available to local units of government versus internet service providers, et cetera, is all covered in the user guide. In addition, that that April 3rd memo entitled Additional Guidance on Evidence could be useful just as a mechanism of walking through. I personally think that what's included in there does a pretty good job of walking through a thought process to answer that core question we lift up all the time. Could somebody with no knowledge of my community or my company understand just from what is shown on the four corners of this page or four corners of these pages, if it's multiple documents of evidence, why the locations I've included in my challenge should have their status changed through the challenge I've requested? How have I shown that for these specific locations, I have met the burden of proving the standards as they're outlined in the user guide and initial proposal volume 1? So those are the places I would point them toward. If they have questions after that has taken place, then we do have, or after they've done that work, then we do have upcoming office hours again on Thursday and then next Monday. And they're also welcome to ask us questions. That leo-myhighspeedinternet@michigan.gov email address is a great place to get hold of us if there are specific questions about operating the portal, or issues that they're experiencing with the portal, or questions about evidence that are not addressed in the user guide itself. So those are the places I would recommend, Chris. Great question. It is no surprise to anybody on the phone or to anybody on the line that we've only got about 10 minutes left in today's office hours session. So certainly there's been plenty of time for folks who do have questions, and it's my impression that those who are on the meeting are largely here in listening mode. But if you do have questions, I just wanted to flag that we are drawing close to our wrap-up time. So this is the time to raise your hand if you do want to get something addressed during office hours today. Alrighty, I'm not sure if I say Bess or Bez, but go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey guys, my name Bess. I'm a representative from Strategic Alliance Community Development, and I was trying to figure out where will, because we got in kind of late. The Hexbin tool, is this far as questions for the Hexbin tool, how we get into that portal?
Yeah, the Hexbin tool for designing projects or designing subgrant projects does not exist yet, because it can't be created until we finish the BEAD State Challenge process and established the final list of which locations in the state of Michigan will be eligible for the BEAD program. So you can't find it because we don't have it out there yet. But once we work through this challenge process, then that'll be released as we move towards subgrant applications.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, happy to help.
Hey, one more question. Is it a way that I can I play this this video back? Is it a way we can?
Yeah, so they are being recorded, and we have our communications team, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunities communications team, working on getting a place on our website that those can be added. It is my hope that those will be, we're told they'll be done as soon as possible. I don't know an exact deadline for completion. That said, if you've got questions, we're happy to address what those questions might be about the state challenge process. especially because we've done a few of these sessions, so it'd be quite a lot of watching and listening to watch everything back. But if you've got questions we can lift up, I'm happy to do my best to assist, even just right now.
So with the challenge, what would our duties? Because I'm late to the meeting, I apologize.
You're
So
fine.
I just want to confirm what would our assignment be for the challenge. So the area that we have to that we trying to run fiber to,
Mhm.
um, so we would give you guys the data. So like say for instance we mapped Lansing, not Lansing, but Inkster,
Mhm.
Westland. We would give you guys that information to set up the hex bin.
So the state challenge process is a location-based, so location by location by location, BSL by BSL by BSL process for identifying which locations are currently served, which is to say they have a BEAD qualifying service technology at a BEAD qualifying speed, which is to say they are not or underserved. So they have that BEAD qualifying technology at 100 by 20 or faster. Those locations are served, or they're part of a project that is going to get them that service, whether it's through a planned service, a planned project that can be documented in ways that meet initial proposal volume 1, or an existing state, local, or federal funding program, enforceable commitment kind of thing. And so once all of those locations are correctly identified, right, as either unserved, um, underserved, or served, as either funded or unfunded, and as either essentially standard locations, standard BSLs, homes or businesses, or community anchor institutions. Once all of those labels are correct, then we can move forward with the BEAD subgrant implementation process. And so the role of the state challenge process is that we pick up the information from the FCC broadband data collection. We put some additional filters or perspectives on it, applying some NTIA requirements, applying some things specific to Michigan that happened through the approval of the BEAD process that are documented in initial proposal volume 1. And then after that, that map is what was published on MichiganBroadbandMap.com or the Michigan State Challenge portal. You'll hear us use both names for it. Challenges then are essentially requests for correction to the information that shows up on that map right there. Maybe it's because you have a planned deployment or you're aware of a planned deployment that needs to be represented on the map. Maybe it's because you have information that a community anchor institution exists where one is not represented on the map, or there's any other type of challenge that might be necessary from the list of acceptable challenges that, again, is represented in BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 1. And so we're happy to walk through that process of taking a look at what it is that, in the communities you are working with might need to be added or changed, might need to be added into the challenge process through the submission of challenges. But what we would ask you to do is take a look at Initial Proposal Volume 1. First, take a look at the user guide, just the sections that are relevant to the work that you're trying to do in terms of what types of challenges you think you might need to submit. And then if you've got additional questions from there, to let us know, either in the next office hours or by email. So that's where we would send you.
Okay. Okay.
I see that we have come kind of right up against time at this point. And I know a lot of folks who have joined us for the meeting have been here sitting and listening to the good questions, not only in this session, but also in the last several sessions. And Jackie, I think, made a really excellent point in the chat just a little bit ago, lifting up the idea that it is important to pause and just remember how much work that everybody has been doing to figure out what needs to happen through the challenge process, how to engage in the challenge process, and then to actually be here and be part of it. So she says we should all pat ourselves on the back for still being here and wrapping our brains around this. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody did have a chance to hear that message from her, because I think it's a great one and one I'd like to lift up to all of you as well. So do feel free to join us again on Thursday. In fact, feel encouraged to join us again on Thursday. We'll continue to share as best we're able real-time updates and add those functions to the portal as we're able to work through them with the developer. And if you do have additional specific questions, concerns, just send them our way in the meantime. So thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.